Oh, okay. So we have a rant here. So ranting coming. As much as I want to try and defend the young in service officers, and there are a handful that are absolutely brilliant, but on the whole, the quality of the 0 to 2 years service is shocking. A good example will be at the weekend. We had an absolute godshite come into the cells and was literally winding up everybody anyway, was literally winding everyone up. Anyway, this cop started to cry and had to be taken out of the charge room. I was just amazed. I'm not expecting anything big, just stand there and remain professional. But no, we had full tears. Do you get much messages about recruits now? Because I get quite a few. Just saying that the recruits now don't seem to be as robust as they once were.
Do you know what it is? I've been thinking about this a lot, and I remember speaking to Brendan O'Brien that came onto the Pocket Sergeant podcast because he does all the police recruitment coaching and stuff like that. And I was just discussing with him. I think what's happened. I think there's been a generational shift. Every generation, there's a shift. So the people that were in the job before us, 10, 20 years before us, we'll have come into the job, and those people would have had an opinion about us and the way we policed. So I think younger people coming through now, they're more aware of everything. I think the police service now it used to be treated as a job for life. Like certainly when I
Mhm.
joined, it was a job for life. But now people are joining the police to do 2 or 3 years, build the skills, and then go. I think there's a high turnover. There's a really high turnover in policing as well. I think there's a mixture of not being able to attract the very best because we're not paying them well enough. We're not treating them well enough. But has the quality of police officer gone down? Probably not. I don't think. I'd like to think not. But I
Mhm.
just think there has been a generational shift in the way the younger people look at the world and the look at policing is just different to how you and I perhaps looked at it. I don't know what your
It,
thoughts are on that.
it definitely used to be a job for life. And I think now I don't think it's viewed that way. And I think when you look at police pay in real terms, on paper it looks all right. Like after six,
Mm.
7 years, you're earning 40, 50 grand a year. That looks good. But then when you actually consider inflation in real terms, it's like police are actually paid, I think, about 20% less now than they used to be. And then when you take away the pension contributions, I mean, when I was on top whack, well, not me, bad example. I wasn't in the pension because it was too expensive. But I know officers that were in the pension, and they would spend. They'd have to pay £400-500 a month just on the pension. So straight away, you're having like a fifth of your wage taken off. And I know when I first started, I was starting in the police, I had the same responsibilities as everyone else. But I would be coming home after my pension contribution with about 13, 14, maybe £1,500 a month. And I mean, if you're I mean, I had a house. I was a single parent at the time, so I just didn't have enough money to make to, to to live really. So I had to come out of it. When it comes to the recruit, I think they should scrap the degree program. 100% scrap
Mm.
that, because I think that attracts younger in service people who may not have necessarily had the most life experience which is required when it comes to being a cop, because you're going into people's homes and you're injecting yourself into people's lives when they're having a really terrible time, and you're expected to be relatable. Some people, some younger people who are 18, 19, who I've worked with, have been absolutely brilliant. Others, not so much. Um, so I think you need to scrap the degree program. You don't need a degree to be a copper. I've always said this, and it attracts a younger demographic, and it actually stops people who are older in service, who maybe have not been to school or studied for the past 10, 15 years. They keep saying they want to get ex-army people and stuff like that into ex-service people into the force, into the service. But if you've got someone who's come out of the army, who's been in for 10, 15 years, and then you tell them you need to do a degree when they can
Yeah, I
get them
mean,
skills and go elsewhere and earn
Did
twice as
you do a
much.
degree? Did you do a degree as part of your entry?
No, I did the it was like the IPL dip, so I just did the application and the interview and everything else.
All right, because I think our force was the pilot. So
Oh
Cleveland
really?
Police was the pilot for these degrees, and it was like a foundation degree in policing.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a classroom probably for about 9 months,
Hmm.
learning word for word the definitions of burglary, theft, and everything else. And actually, when I went out station, I learnt more in a few weeks out there on the street
Hmm.
than what I did at uni.
You
And
learn policing by doing it.
my tutor was laughing at me at some of the stuff I was coming out with because you do it very that you're like a robot, aren't you?
Yeah.
Come out of uni, you're like a robot. You've got to say things in a certain way, and you almost forget how to speak to people. And my tutor was like, "What was all that about? You don't have to say that and do it that way. You
Yeah.
do this, so you're almost taught how to do the job properly." But going back to the initial comments about whether newer cops maybe not at the standard that they used to be. But that just brings me back to a story that I can tell about. There was a cop on my shift. I've no idea how this cop got in the job. Who was scared of the dark
Fucking heard of that. I've unfortunately that's not the first time I've heard that sort of thing. And you've met an officer like that.
on my shift. Yeah,
That is
they were on
insane.
my shift. Yeah. So, and the people that know me will be messaging me as soon as they've seen this, and they'll be like, "I can't believe you told him this story." But yeah, there was a job where we had to break off on a night shift. We had to break off, and she had to obtain details for a missing person from a kids' home. And then I had to go off to a domestic because we just short staffed. Everybody was tied
Mhm.
up, and then another double crew unit peeled off from one another and whatever else. And then yeah, this was on a night shift. It was about 1 a.m. And then all I heard was this cop shout up saying, "Oh, can somebody give me a lift?" Bearing in mind, it was a 15-minute walk from the kids' home to the Nick.
Mhm.
And the sergeant was like, "Can you just walk? Can you just walk, please? Because everyone's tied up." And she was like, "Well, I don't want to walk. I don't want to walk. It's dark outside." Over the air. It was all over the air. And he said, "You're a police officer, so start walking now." And then
Yeah.
it was just going back and forth. I just
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. It's like, but this same cop was scared of dogs. So there was a job out. We both went to his double crewed unit, domestic. Could hear screaming and shouting inside. So I run to the front door, open the front door, and then she just stood at the end of the pavement. I was like, "Are you coming?" She's like, "No, no, no, I'm scared of dogs." All right, I'll just deal with that
I'll
domestic
just
myself
deal with
then,
it
should I?
myself then. I
So we can all tell stories about incompetent cops or, um, yeah,
there's
it's not a new thing.
no, and I get yeah, and it's yeah, it's easy with the stories to bash new recruits and tar them all with the same brush. I've worked with some absolute fucking mint cops who have had half my service. They're just starting out. But when it comes to the actual recruitment side, because we're losing so many cops now, that's a fucking another topic completely about retention and keeping older bobbies because we need good cops. Like society crumbles if
Mm,
there's no law and order. But I'm being told by different people and things what I'm looking into, like because the forces are struggling to keep hold of bobbies, they're reducing the standard of people coming in. So I've heard that a Bobby told me the other day. I was having an interview with him actually. He came on there and he said, um, the recruitment they needed so many bobbies, but so many people couldn't pass the requirements to get in. But because they needed to fill up the numbers, they actually contacted cops who weren't good enough to offer them the job because they needed it. I'm being told there's officers who now don't have to do the final interview because too many people fail it, so they don't have to do it. Which
mm,
I mean, for me, when I was trying to get in the place, I studied for weeks for that final interview, if not longer, writing out my answers, writing out the questions, getting people to quiz me on them until it was absolutely, on the tip of my tongue, the perfect answer. So if you really want it, you'll work for it. So they're reducing that. I mean, even such things as like the fitness test, which is a massive bugbear of mine. One, it's not applicable to the job anyway with the kind of test what they have to do. But there's people who can't pass a fitness test and being allowed in because they need the numbers. So in that
Yeah,
sense,
but I mean, equally, you've got cops that have really they've done a long, long time in the police, so they might have done 25 years or whatever, and they might have joined at 40 years old.
yeah,
So is it fit for purpose sending these on a PST refresher, doing the fitness test? It isn't, not really.
I think it's the style of fitness test anyway. Because I mean, a bleep test, you run 10 meters, you turn around and then you run back. There's just no situation in the police where you're going to need that. I think it should be
No.
like, how fast can you run a quarter of a kilometer or whatever? And I mean, I understand what you're saying in the sense of some cops might join a little bit later, but if your colleague's getting a red kicked in and they're pressing the red button, you need to be able to cover that distance as quick as possible. So
Mm.
I get what you're saying, like with the fitness
But yeah,
testing.
but equally, you could have somebody that can get level 15 on a bleep test and personal safety training. Yet they might be scared in a situation like that and just back off. Who would
Yeah.
you rather have? Would you rather have somebody who can do level 3 or 4 on a fitness test, somebody that's going to dive in and save you, help you,
Mhm.
or somebody who's a really good, like a cross country runner, who's too scared to act? I think it's difficult, and I think it's more complex than how it sounds. And I certainly think when you get to a certain age as well in the police, that you should have the option to go somewhere like some sort of back office role, and not just be expected to stay on response. Because I
Yeah.
think when you get to a certain age, it's not great rolling around with people and whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, and you tend to find that, don't you? Like, I think response definitely has a shelf life, and not just a case of that's where people go and serve their initial time, and then they might move on. But I think with the demand of the shifts and the things what you actually have to deal with, and you know, you're getting older, you're in your 40s, you're not wanting to be rolling around with an 18-year-old coked off his head on a middle of a town centre on a
Mm.
Friday night, are you? At 3 in the morning. It's so it's definitely got a shelf life in that sense. Just on just on response, Paul, like, I mean, for me, I think response officers should be given more incentive to stay on because it's the backbone of policing. And it seems to be the place where everyone can't wait to get off. So do you think there should be some kind of incentive when it comes to response policing?
Oh, well, what incentive? Financial incentive?
Potentially?
For me, the way response was going, certainly when I left, it's got worse since then. No amount of money would keep me there,
Yeah.
and I think your physical and mental well-being is more important than money, and more important than incentives. I think the only way to fix response and make it the department where everybody wants to go, which it used to be at one point, is to treat people better, treat your workforce better,
Yeah.
manage the crimes better, make braver decisions, and get rid of jobs that where you're not getting cooperation from a so-called victim of crime, rather
Mhm.
than chasing for weeks on end. And I think we just need to be. And I'm not. By the way, I'm not saying bin burglaries, bin thefts, um, bin all of these crimes, which is something we've seen in recent years in the press. But there are jobs, there are incidents that come in where you're like, this can be closed. This can be closed. We've done this investigation. It's
Mhm.
done.
Definitely agree
Or I
with the
mean,
treating cops better. Treating cops better
yeah,
is certainly
it's
on
about
response.
keeping. We need to keep the jobs down. We need to keep the number of jobs down. We need to help the cops manage their workloads,
Yeah.
because at the moment they're not getting the time that they need to serve members of the public, and that is why they joined the police. So I don't think any amount of incentives will help. I think that the way things get better is from the top. It's down to the top, the chiefs, to start making brave decisions. And uh, yeah,
100% agree, and I think there'll be people listening to that fucking cheering, mate. I think people hear that, like, no one ever tells me I went off response because the money was shit. It's
mm.
always I went off response because they didn't care about my mental health, or I was getting PTSD, or I was burnt out, or we didn't have enough staff, or it became too dangerous. They're the reasons, and those are the things which the bosses at the top need to stop thinking about their own
And I
promotions.
tell you what I really hate, what I really, really hate, is when you've had people in those positions at the top or near the top, they've left the job, and then they're banging the drum and they're like, "Oh, things need to change." It's like, no, you had your time, and they get loads of engagement on social media. It's like you've had your time to make those positive changes, but what have you done? You've done nothing. You've creamed your salary. That is one thing that really riles me.
Totally
I
agree.
tell you what, yeah, oh,
This
I'm
this
boiling just thinking
ex
about it.
this ex superintendent who retired 5 years ago, who was a superintendent and a position of serious authority for the past 20 years of their career, who licked ass. They did what the boss above them wanted. They didn't give a shit about the cop on the ground. They just saw figures and stats and numbers, climbed all the way to the position, retired with a nice chunky pension, and then go, yeah, it's really bad, isn't it, in the police? Well, when you were in the fucking job, why didn't you do something about it? But instead, you did what the rest of them do: is you just think about number one, and you're in the bloody in club, you're in the SLT team, and you don't give a shit about the cops on the ground. And then you wonder why everyone's bloody leaving, and why people don't want to be cops, and why people don't want to stay, and why mental health's in the absolute shit pan. And and you have the absolute audacity to go onto national TV or something like that and say, yeah, it's really tough, things need to change, and the police
Yeah,
need to do more. Well, what
yeah.
the hell
It's
did
like,
you do when
what
you
did
were on
you
there?
do?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That really winds me up. But what I would love to see, I'd love to see, and I'm sure there is one of all the chief constables that are in position today to take a trip to one of their police stations with the busiest response shifts, sit down with them for half an hour initially, and you ask them how their job can be fixed.
Mhm.
And then you implement things that make the life easier for those cops.
Well, my old force did that. Is that they called it the Chiefs? They called it the Chief Con Road Show. Anyway, so we call it Chief Con Roadshow, where the Chief Con would visit all the stations and all the response blocks, and you would have the superintendent stood next to him. You'd have the chief superintendent, you'd have inspectors, you'd have all the SLT and all the leadership, all smiling and nodding, yes, sir, everything's fine, everything's really, really good. And then it's the Chief Con would say, right, I want to speak to some of the bobbies in that room over there, and the cops would get a whisper in the ear basically saying, do not tell him anything wrong. He doesn't want to hear that.
Mm,
No, he does want to hear that. That's why he's here.
yeah,
But you don't want us to say that because that makes you look bad. So
we used to get told to get out of the office whenever there was big brass coming.
yeah,
We were
we
like, we
had the
don't.
same.
Yeah, they were like, we don't want anybody in the parade room doing anything. So plan your time around this. Big brass is coming at 1 o'clock, so you all need to be out
Yeah.
because because there was the perception that it would make our shift look lazy if we're all inside doing a case file or doing paperwork. Why they all sat around? Why? Do you know what I mean?
Or mate, even just having a minute.
Yeah,
You're on your fifth shift. It's bloody 6 o'clock in the evening or whatever it is. You're absolutely knackered. You're just having 5 minutes, and it's like, no, get out. The bosses are coming. Well, good, because I would like to talk to the boss about
yeah,
what's going on.
yeah,
But that wouldn't look good
yeah.
for your promotion, would it?
No,
Anyway, right. Fucking love a good rant. How good's a good rant?
I don't even know what we were talking about initially before.
Oh, recruits. And they went into
Yeah,
response and everything
yeah,
else. Yeah. So
yeah. But
in
no,
answer to your question, response. I don't know. Recruits are
the
recruits, and
one
it's the job itself.
the one thing or a couple of things that I do think newer recruits could improve on, by the way, is, and I've had this, I've dealt with this personally through friends and family, is communication. Communication, certainly in some of the cases that I'm aware of, are massively lacking. I mean, we've got victims code of practice, so in theory, cops should be updating victims weekly or every 28 days or whatever it might be. I do think cops across the board should be better at communicating. Just drop a note through the door. Do you know what I mean? It's just keeping people updated, because if they're not updated, they're going to be on edge and they're going to wonder what's happening. They're going to be calling the office and everything else. But that is one thing that we were really good at as a response shift when I was working the job. We would drop off notes for each other just to keep people up to date.
Mhm.
But I do think that's lacking today.
Empathy burnout's a big problem, and that's something that doesn't get spoke about enough. And when it comes to dealing with people and dealing with incidents, to the member of the public, that's the worst incident that's ever happened to them. They've put in the faith in the police, they want to be updated. So I can completely understand where the members of the public are coming from, that, you know, they want a good service from the police. And I always tried my best. Every shift, I'd have a list of people I need to contact, even if it was just an email or a text, even if there was no
Yeah,
update. It's I just to let you know, no update yet. Still waiting on X, Y, and Z. Great. I know it's up to you. You've not forgotten about me. But then there's
yeah,
empathy burnout, what can come in, where cops can, unfortunately, because of how much they're overworked and the stresses they're under, they don't see it as there's this person here relying on me. They see it as it's another job in my workload. And that's a serious problem. And it's not the Bobby's fault, it's the stress of the organization, what they put on the cops a lot of the time. But yeah, I completely agree. We need to,
yeah. But there's something that I always stuck by when I was a serving cop was the person that you're dealing with. If would a member of your family be happy with the way that you were dealing with this member of the public or
Mhm.
dealing with this victim of crime? If the answer is yes, then I was happy. So I get empathy burnout, but there is a way to speak to people.
Yeah.
There is a way to deal with people. But yeah, I always used to just treat people almost like a member of the family, or
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
that's a good way to be, mate, is look at it like that. Um, so yeah, I completely agree.